my fellow readers. In this video, I'm going to be doing a just reading challenge wrap-up. You may recall, or you can go back and watch it like months and months and months ago. I did a video where I talked about the reading challenges that I would be participating in 2021. And so I figured I'd do just a fun wrap-up of how did I do. Not surprisingly, I did fairly well, except for dun dun dun, Pop Sugar, which I always print out Pop Sugar, and I'm sure I mentioned this. I print this out like every year, and I like to look at it and see what some of their suggestions are, but I never finish this one. Like, I just don't do it. I find that I'm not as interested, and I give up on it. I crossed off one book. Now, this does not mean that I only read one book that fits these categories, but the only one I marked down was a dark academia book for Catherine House. I'm sure that I did some of these other ones, but I didn't mark it. I just was like, no, I'm just going to finish the other ones. So I did finish my Read More reading challenge for 2021, and that was a total of 26 books. And I finished the Read Harder challenge from Book Riot 2021. That was 24 books, and usually when I do these, I do not duplicate titles on here. There might be one or two that I will, but usually I try to complete them using different books. And then I also did the Novelist 2021 book challenge. I finished both beginners and aficionados. On the Novelist book challenges were like an additional 24 books. So in general, I really appreciate reading challenges because sometimes it does get me to read outside of my comfort zone. Especially the Book Riot's Read Harder challenge, because there are things on there like there's some of these that are not like, I'm like, whatever. Read a realistic YA book not set in the US, UK, or Canada. So that sometimes gets you to look outside. With something like that, you can choose either to read a translated work, or, you know, you have to actually look for something that is set somewhere else. For that one, I read The Silence of Bones, and I'm trying to remember if I even liked that book. It was pretty good. I think that's the one about the girl, I believe it was set in Korea, and there was like a murder or something. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read it. But I thought that was pretty good. Oh, I liked this one, the Read and Own Voices YA book with a black main character that isn't about black pain, because that is something that is often the main focus. Like, if there is a black character, usually the main focus is going to be on black pain. And there were a lot of titles published that had black main protagonists, but a big part of that would be about black pain. And I like that this was like fine when that doesn't. I read a book, I feel like it was last year, that I think would be great for that category. But this year I ended up reading Ray Bear, which is a super, super good fantasy story. And book 2 is coming out in 2022. So I would recommend that one. But I liked that that was a challenge, but also bringing the importance of having narratives that are not about the pain of said group. And I think that that happens a lot, both with books with black main protagonists and also LGBTQ plus characters. I get it, because it is of value to show the struggle and what people have gone through or are going through. But I think at the same time, it's also important to have main protagonists that show positive life, you know, because there are, that is an option too. It's not all darkness for you and bad things. So yeah, I liked that was one of the options. One of the more difficult, I guess you would say, ones was read a book by or about a non-Western world leader. For that one, I actually enjoyed Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, which was Nelson Mandela's biography. It was very long, but it was also very good. He had an interesting past, and, you know, living with apartheid. Anyway, it's very good. I would recommend it. My least favorite ones, if I'm being honest, are where they want you to read like poetry. It's not even that I don't like poetry, but I like poetry either that like I choose, or, you know, reading it in bits sporadically. Like if I find a poem, I don't mind reading it. But yeah, so this one did have to read a book of nature poems, and I chose the Lost Words. Sorry, I almost said the wrong title. Which was fine. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but it was fine. One of my favorite ones, which I did do a review of the book, was a children's book that centers... No, it's funny, I think that they didn't have all the words here. But a children's book that centers around a disabled character, but not their disability. And so I chose Planet Earth is Blue for that, because even though the main character was autistic, and that did impact like how people interact with her, it wasn't about her being autistic, it was about her relationship with her sister. And so I really loved that book. That was like one of my favorites from this year. Such a good book. Yeah. I also loved read a book featuring a beloved pet where the pet doesn't die. I panicked when I saw that category, but I chose Cheese Sweet Home for that, which I super loved. Yeah, they had a lot of great ones, and I'm glad I finished Read Harder. It was good. For my Read More, I'm going to see if there's any that I want to point out. So I loved this. There was one we had that was a book with a place name in the title. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't say it has to be a real place. So for that book, I actually went with Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, which is a good fantasy story. So if you want to read it, give it a go. That is the one that I would describe as like a zombie love story with fantasy. It's really good. The last book I finished for this challenge, I finished in August. So when I finished the challenge overall, and it was mainly just because I was waiting for Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy. So that was my book about a famous person. And it's just funny because if I look at the challenge, a lot of the rest of it was finished in like January and February. And then that one took until August. There were a few I like peppered in throughout the other months. So we have like April and May and June. But then from June on, there's this gap of 2 months until I got to read that book. It was fun. This is the year I finally read The Kite Runner, because there was read a book that everyone's read except for you, and that's how I felt. Like, especially actually when I started my job at the library, I feel like everybody was reading The Kite Runner and like recommending The Kite Runner, and I'm like, I don't know if I even want to read it. And to be honest, I was rather disturbed by that book. I feel like almost exploitative pain. I don't know. I think I wrote some thoughts on Goodreads about it, but I didn't like all the pain, like that the main character of it was very whiny about his own experiences and what he had to go through. But then like the actual person who was undergoing that pain, he just kind of like brushed off. So I don't know, it just bothered me. Another book I did not do a review on, but I would recommend that I read for this is a book about oppression or freedom, and I chose We Are Not Free, which had to do with the Japanese internment camps or concentration camps, essentially, or American camps that we forcibly removed Japanese American citizens from their homes and sent them to these camps. This book actually pairs very well with George Takei's account of They Called Us Enemy. It's a great graphic novel memoir, but you can pair it very well with We Are Not Free. And yeah, it's just such a traumatic experience, you know, like it just wasn't, it wasn't fair, and it wasn't right what we did to the Japanese citizens during World War II. Anything else that I would want to mention? I got to read Return of the Thief this year, which was the end of the Thief, Queen's Thief series by Megan Whalen Turner. Am I right in that name? Hopefully. I loved that series. And it came to a very good, fulfilling conclusion. I just saw that on here and it just made me smile. It was such a good book. But it's funny, I picked that for a book you meant to read in 2020, which I think I did, and I like somehow forgot about its release, and it just sat there in my to be read, and I finally like picked it up, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm finally wrapping it up, and it was so great. Yeah, I think that's all. And finally, this was the first year I've ever done the Novelist book challenge. And this is the one I think I took a little bit more leeway, where I didn't mind if I repeated a book from one of my other challenges. Because I was just like, you know, I'm just kind of trying this year. And I don't want to push myself to read a bunch of things that I don't want to read just to finish this. But even then, it was maybe one or two books might be a repeat. For example, Eat a Peach, an Own Voices memoir, I think is on one of my other lists. And maybe there wasn't another one. Which isn't too bad. Like, if there's one duplicate, that's actually pretty good. I'll see if there's any that stand out to me. Here's one. Read a romantic comedy by a POC author. So I chose Sweet Hand, which is a romance novel, and I had seen it recommended on other booktuber videos, and that was a good romance. I liked it. It was well written. I liked the characters. Yeah. Oh, read a book recommended for fans of a TV show you like. I'm trying to remember if I looked up books for Supernatural fans, I think, maybe. But anyway, I ended up with White Cat, which I believe is a Holly Black series, if I'm remembering correctly. Fun. That was a fun book. There's like I think it's a trilogy. And I read all of them, and it was really good and fun. So I would highly recommend that. Read a speculative novel with the theme Vengeance is Mine, which I did, The Only Good Indians, which is terrific horror. I really liked that book. Like, it got great atmosphere. I loved how the story played out. And then just one I would make note of, read a book starring a main character with a disability, and I chose A Sign of Affection. So there are times, even with book challenges, where you can choose graphic novel or manga. I can't say that you could do the whole challenge with graphic novels, because it really depends. Like, Read Harder, I don't think that you could, because I just don't think that they exist for all of the forms. Like, for some of the world leader books and stuff like that, I just don't think you could. Same with poetry. Like, you literally would have to find a poetry book. As far as I know, I don't think there's a graphic novel poetry. But it is kind of like an added thing. Like, if you prefer graphic novels and manga, you can look for those categories that you can fill with graphic novels and manga. There's no saying you can't do it. You totally can. So yeah. Oh, this was also the year that I finally got to read Moxie. It was for read a book that has been or will be made into a movie, and I also watched the movie version. What's funny about Moxie is I actually had an arc of that book from before it was published, and I was really interested in it, and I never got to read it. So the book came out, it did well, like everybody was talking about it, and it just sat there on my Kindle. But this year, years after it's been out, finally got to read Moxie. It is a cute story. I actually think I might prefer the movie more than the book, but it is what it is. I can't remember though. I think I did though. I think I just enjoyed the experience better as the movie, but I thought both were good. So, yeah. I think that wraps it up with a look at my reading challenges. I hope to do a video soon that's going to cover my resolutions for 2022, my reading resolutions, and we'll also cover the reading challenges I'm going to aim to complete in 2022. But this is getting too long and I don't want to do it. Also look forward to my quarterly review where I will wrap up 2021. And, you know, I'm thinking like that might be quarterly, but also year in review. So I'm not sure yet what that's going to look like. There'll either be 2 videos or just the one. It'll either be like quarterly review and year in review, or it's going to be quarterly review plus the year review. And definitely we'll be doing the reading resolutions. Because there's some things I want to talk about, what I plan for 2022, because this year was intense. So thanks for watching. That's all for this video. Until next time, bye.